what we do working collegiately is to try and be inventive, try and think of new ways to tackle problems, but also learn from each other.
That will be of huge benefit, I imagine, to lots of kind of middle and senior leaders.
That's a bit of a top tip, actually, isn't it, Lacey? If you're very strategic about the day, if you're going with a colleague saying, right, I get to go there, you go there, let's join up in the break and see, and then cross over, yeah.
Supporting or that partnership with parents is, I think, equally challenging, whether you're in a really affluent area or a really deprived area. Different challenges, but both need significant work. She hasn't really told me exactly what she's going to speak at the time of recording, but Shannon is a new deputy head and very, very busy, so I'm very grateful that she's going to be there at all. Welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the podcast that makes time and space to think about pedagogy, teaching and learning, professional development, anything of interest to time-poor but enthusiasm-rich primary teachers. This week, I'm joined by Lacey Cousins and Natalie Stevenson to talk about the upcoming TDaPE London conference and the wonderful sessions that we have on offer, thanks to so many generous speakers. Lacey and Natalie, it's absolutely lovely to have you here today. How are you both?
Well, thank you, Kieran.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
So you guys are co-head teachers, or you certainly share leadership responsibility across Hawley and Eleanor Palmer primary schools, Hawley being the host school, but I think in spirit, Eleanor Palmer is very much involved as well. Is that right?
That's right. Hawley and Eleanor Palmer in a partnership, and Lacey's the head of school at Hawley, and I'm the exec head across the partnership, but the head teacher at Eleanor Palmer.
That's what it is. I've sold you short then with the co-head teacher, but I knew it was a very...
I am a co-head at Eleanor Palmer with Sally Hill, who's not on this meeting.
And so you guys, we spoke after the conference last year, and you said, you wanted to bring TDaPE conference to Camden. Camden is one of my favorite parts of London. Certainly one of the first parts I went to whenever I moved to England. And so it's, as luck would have it, the second iteration of the London conference is going to be held in Camden, and I thought it makes sense to go through the sessions to see where you're excited to go to, and which path you'll take through the schedule, which I think is, fair to say it's stacked with very generous speakers, because they're all giving their time to help us raise money for Valindra.
Yeah, we're delighted to host at Hawley and in Camden because, first of all, Lacey and I are sort of super fans. I don't want to speak for you, Lacey, but we're long-time listeners and just really excited to hear and see lots of these amazing people that you speak to on the podcast in the flesh. And also in Camden, you've got just such collegiate teachers who are passionate and want to work together. And so there's a lot of people who'll be turning up on the day, I'm sure.
When I visited the subject leaders in Camden, the subject knowledge they had and the pedagogical knowledge they had was, it was a level above sort of typical conversations. And so you're really pushing ideas to their extremes when you're working with the Camden maths leads. So I'm sure that goes the whole way across the county, doesn't it?
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. And it goes across subjects, of course, as well.
So, I mean, if you're listening to the episode now, we've got a week until the conference on the day of release. So the clock is ticking. If you're seeing this on LinkedIn, the conference was 3 weeks ago. So I'm sorry you've missed it, but that's the way the algorithm works. It gives you 3 weeks late. But now is the time. Like, one school are sending 19 members of staff because two senior leaders came last year and they loved it so much that they have decided they're making an inset day this year.
Wow.
And so they've got that choice to go and, they can send all their teachers to the different sessions that are applicable to them, So if we kick things off, session one, there are 6 rooms in each session, so 6 sessions. 2 sessions will be, 3 sessions, but 2 speakers will be virtual due to a number of different reasons. But in session one, we have Adam Colback and Sarah Coddinghat exploring professional development for decision making. We've got Amy Howe in the unofficial maths room, learning about Reckon Recs and building confidence and strong foundations. Ella Martin is going to be talking about retrieval practice and how you can transform assessment into foundation subjects. Claire Burton Gardner, first time speaker at the TDaPE conference about reading at the heart of everything. Stephen Lockyer, enterprising young minds. And then Katie Morrill, scaffolding for all. And Katie will be virtual. Katie's got a trip to the theatre in the afternoon and she's up north. So she's, I said, we can do virtual because we've already got Christopher coming in on Zoom as well. So tough choice to start the morning off, but where are you going to go to?
Retrieval practice is so, it feels so embedded, but it's also something that's so constantly evolving. So Ella Martin's session is kind of a particular interest for me. I think I know that we see it, as I said, so much across both of our schools and in lots of the work that we do. But I think it really can be used in so many different ways. It's really interesting to kind of see how different schools utilize it as a tool. And I'm particularly interested in how this session is going to focus on its use of assessment within the foundation subjects, because again, I think it's an area that as a sector, we're still kind of hugely lacking real consistency or really good practice. So very keen to see what Ella's doing at her school and how that can influence us.
It's tough. It's been very tough to pick across each session. But I think my first pick would be Adam Colbeck and Sarah Cottingham's talk. And I've read lots of what Sarah has written before. I haven't heard Adam speak. But I think it's really chiming in with my thinking at the moment to do with teachers making so many time-sensitive decisions in the moment that are often very high stakes for learning or for behaviour or both. And I've been thinking a lot about this while designing CPD, about behaviour, about maths, about lesson design, because the more teachers can form habits and routines for learning, but have the subject knowledge and have frameworks that to the extent would automate some of that complex work, then the more they can free their thinking to make those decisions in the moment. So I'm so interested to hear from those speakers about what they would have to say on that subject.
What your choices sort of highlighted almost like two very specific ways of thinking about your session decision. If you're thinking about assessment in the foundation subjects, it's almost like, all teachers can benefit from seeing what this looks like, because there may be stuff you can use in the classroom. But then with Sarah and Adam's session, it's almost like if I'm going for a very specific element of leadership and a way that we can, like you say, put those systems in place. I think those are two different ways of thinking about the journey through the day, perhaps, in the same way that if you go and visit Amy with the Wrecking Wreck, maths leads are going to be there because they're going to have the very much a case of, I want to improve maths and what strategies do we have on our disposal. And so it's really, really interesting. And in particular, when we think about retrieval practice, is almost like the initial thing. There was cognitive load theory and there was retrieval practice. And whenever the conversation about evidence-informed practice began in England, well over a decade ago, maybe pushing 2 decades, although somebody will say, oh, this has been on for much longer than that. But in real terms, schools weren't really acting on it, in my experience. The fact that you're still saying a decade and more later that actually this is something to think about, I think it's really, really important, because things can mutate and things that are getting called retrieval practice that perhaps they're not. And I know Ella works a lot with carousel and stuff like that, so that we think, talking Adam will be involved in that stuff. And so really, really interesting.
It's also making me think about how, yes, cognitive load theory and how that pertains to pupils, but what about the teacher's cognitive load? And that's what I was interested in relation to making those decisions. That's important too to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, Adam, he's it's his humility. He's such a massive contribution over the last couple of years to education, and his humility in that. I don't know if you listened to the episode where I spoke to him and Chris about their work on deputy headship. And yeah, so that'll be a really good session. And when they've spoken before at conferences, they will be practicing down to the word and the delivery. So there's going to be a lot of effort will have been put into that session. Honourable mentions for Katie Morrill sessions about SEND. I know SEND is on a lot of people's minds. And the virtual sessions in Cymru worked really well. They're well attended, and it was almost as if the people were in the room. So don't be deterred if anyone's listening thinking it's a virtual session. But I think wherever you go in session one, you can't go wrong. So in session two, then, we've got Tom Oakley talking about leading change. Joe Austin's going to be talking about number sense, what it is and how we teach it. Matt Hinckley, first-time speaker at the TDaPE conference from TSAT down in Kent, although they're around the country as well. The issues on personifying artificial intelligence in the primary classroom. And I think his sort of headline is something about like our robot overlords, really like that Simpsons, but then obviously the Simpsons were referencing something whenever they.
I talk about that all the time, Kieran, and I'm so polite when I interact with any AI, just in case, I want to be on the good list, not on the naughty list.
I'm not. I get really frustrated with it. I'm all like, this is supposed to be PhD level work.
Please and thank you, though. Please and thank you, robot overlord.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, robots are uncaring. They don't have logic, so they're just going to see us all as, if we're on the list. I don't think there's going to be two versions of it.
Oh,
no. Jarlath Kenny, Raising Readers. Jarlath spoke for the first time in Wales and now he's speaking again. So he really enjoyed speaking. Alex Pethick from PKC talking about responsive teaching. And then Candela Marquez, character education in partnership.
I chose Joe Austin and George Mitchell from George Mitchell's school session about number sense. I thought I'd dive in on maths because maths is my sort of specialism, and I'm a consultant for maths. Done lots of maths work over the years in Camden and North London. And what I've seen in the last few years is schools using everything they've learned from phonics-based approach and then applying that to maths, particularly in Key Stage 1 and early years, but to just really unpick what is number sense, how can we get that fluency? And obviously they're not interchangeable terms, number sense and fluency, but I think that drew me to this session, seeing what Joe has to say about solving that complex problem associated with number sense and fluency, the need for math subject knowledge, how it's taught coherently in a packed curriculum, what does that look like? And schools have been trying to tackle that to see where the gaps are found and how they're taught to. And that can look really different in early years and then through Key Stage 1, where it becomes maybe more about retrieval practice and that kind of thing. But that's not the full picture. So, and I'm really interested, especially in the teaching and learning of additive facts and how that's relational and how that links to representations, perhaps a little bit more than multiplicative facts later on. So all of that, I'm sure, will make this session just really, really interesting. And I feel like I can never know enough about it. And I've been knocking around in maths primary education for long enough to know how much I don't know. So I will pick up lots from that session, I think.
Yeah, because I was going to say this is an area of significant expertise of yours, Natalie. So, I mean, what do you hope to just to see what other people are doing, or?
Yeah, because no matter how many schools I work with, in Camden and a little bit beyond, you're still in a bubble, and schools are slow-moving sort of ships. I was going to say cruise ships, but it doesn't feel that way all the time, does it? And so what we do working collegiately is to try and be inventive, try and think of new ways to tackle problems, but also learn from each other. But time poor primary teachers and leaders, you end up learning from each other and developing those things and that we all know about, like number sense maths, for example. I really think is an amazing resource. And so I'd be interested to see, okay, so I know schools that have done this or they've designed their own approach, but what else is out there? And, that makes it not left to chance, because we're all trying different things, but unless you're relatively systematic and you've got an approach or you've plumped for a way of doing this, then too many children are going to slip through the cracks.
It's really nice us kind of being in this setup where, well, we work so collaboratively together and can kind of share the knowledge that we gain throughout the day. So I think we've quite intentionally chosen different pathways that we can move through. I think I found this session the hardest one to pick from, because there's so many different options that I think would be, both of personal interest for me, but beneficial for kind of our school and the setting that we're in. I think Tom Oakley's session on leading change will be fantastic, and that's one that I've kind of penciled to send my English lead who's coming along on the day to go to, because I think that's a real sort of area of development for her, and that will be of huge benefit, I imagine, to lots of kind of middle and senior leaders.
That's a bit of a top tip, actually, isn't it, Lacey? If you're very strategic about the day, if you're going with a colleague saying, right, I get to go there, you go there, let's join up in the break and see, and then cross over, yeah.
And I think that's long been our approach over sort of various conferences that we've been to over the years. So yeah, definite top tip if you're coming with a group of colleagues. I've always had a real sort of strong interest in computing. I've led it for many years since I was an NQT. And so anything to do with kind of AI, I'm really keen to kind of develop my own knowledge of it. I think I'm using it quite a lot now as a leader, but I'm still not kind of confident in its use in the classroom. So again, that would be another one that I'd be really interested in. But I've gone for Candela Marquez's session on this one, character education in partnership, for a multitude of reasons. I think I've long had an interest in Mark Brackett's work on ruler, that was all sort of developed with Yale University. So I'm kind of interested to see the variation in approach that comes from Harvard. And I know that a lot of her, Candela's research will draw on that. So it'll be interesting to kind of see the work that they've put into this sort of character development and education. I think that will be of real interest. I've been working with a sort of local school recently and seeing their kind of approach to behaviour that so fundamentally revolves around children understanding and managing their emotions. And I think it's something that we're quite keen to develop here. And so I'm hoping that that will be a session that really expands my knowledge, or perhaps, opens new areas for me to explore. And I think that will be really interesting in its kind of foundations. But then with the add-on of about working in collaboration with parents is just, we all know how important it is. And we've done a lot of work here at Hawley to bring our community back in. We sort of felt that post-COVID particularly, there was still quite a distance that our parents were keeping, and we're really doing everything that we can to kind of break that down. So it'd be great to see some of the ways that they're using the kind of partnership at Fidelis College and what we can bring of that back here to Hawley.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because you often hear character education in either conversations about secondary school or conversations about the private or international sector. And it'd be really interesting to see if Candela's message and what she's discussing, if someone were to take it from here and utilize it in, say, for instance, an area of high disadvantage, because we know that supporting or that partnership with parents is, I think, equally challenging, whether you're in a really affluent area or a really deprived area. Different challenges, but both need significant work. And what that overlap is like. So that would fascinate me so much. So I'm hoping that something comes from this. And you can't go wrong, like Jonathan, but raising readers and engaging with reading really, really strong, particularly in the Welsh context, where reading is like, it's probably the biggest conversation that's happening in the country at the moment. And because, obviously phonics isn't a given. And so, it'd be really interesting if anyone's sort of at the beginning of their journey, I think maybe checking out that session. And then Alex is obviously fantastic. And her work at PKC is unrivaled. So I think you cannot go wrong regardless of where you go in session 2. I'm probably going to end up saying that for all of them, aren't I? But
yes, we will
put it together.
We will. And it's nice. What's nice about this and what makes it hard to choose is that there are some really specific ones, and then there are some that are really broad, like Tom Oakley's leading change session. And I think that's what makes it really great, because if you're a teacher in a classroom, you might not have much input like that that's quite broad and that's about being a leader in your classroom as well as across school and thinking more strategically. And vice versa. If you're a leader that's not very often in class, then it's great to see, okay, how does rec and rec work in the classroom or whatever. So it's a chance to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, and I've certainly aimed that you can't, there won't be two people talking about the same thing at the same time. Certainly hope there aren't. But if you wanted to follow a thread through the day, you could. Because I think, I don't think... sometimes people follow the names and they go to the name session and they'll get the same session they've seen before with a different title. And really, I recommend you follow the actual content and read the program, because in you guys have had early sight of the actual session descriptions. So beyond the names and titles that I'm given, you've seen what the plans are. So I would always recommend people follow what's this content? Is it applicable to me, or is this going to be something that might be interesting to me down the line? Because you don't know until you don't know. And sometimes I'll just go into a random empty room that's available. Because sometimes the room you want to go to is full. And so yeah, and then you're all, oh, that's something I could follow, a thread I can pull.
In research ed once, I ended up in the wrong room because you can sometimes have happy accidents like that. And I remember the session was really fascinating, and it was all about education in the criminal justice system. And I might not have picked that, even though it sounds interesting. It was interesting, but then you wind up finding something else. So it's quite nice to sometimes, you might have happy accidents. Although planning your route is great too. Are we coming on to session 3 now?
That's exactly what I'm going to do, yeah.
Yeah, because you've really, I'm speaking in session 3, and you've put me up against, it's not a competition, but some absolute bangers. So you outlined it, but that is, I'm gonna do, I'll tell you what I'm speaking about very quickly, but then I'll say what I would do if I was if I was not speaking, and pretty much want to visit every single person in session 3.
Well, I think if you look at all of them, there's not a session where you're not thinking, oh, I'm up against them, but because they're so specific, like I say, because yours is a math session, everyone who's interested in maths is very likely to go to that session, I'd imagine, so it can feel like that. Like there's one time I was up against Sarah Cotty and had Nimish, like Lekha Sharma, and a few other people, and I think I had 4 people come to my research ed talk because it was on the 3rd floor. And it was secondary heavy day.
The thing is, sometimes that's really nice because then it makes it different, doesn't it? It's a different atmosphere and you can be more interactive. And even if it's just one person, there's still one person that you're going to talk to. So that's bring it on. But it would be hard to choose in that session, I think. And but I'll let you outline who's speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old play like as if you're playing in front of 1,000 people kind of thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
So we've got Shannon Doherty in session 3 kicking it off. She hasn't really told me exactly what she's going to speak at the time of recording, but Shannon is a new deputy head and very, very busy. So I'm very grateful that she's going to be there at all. But Shannon will be, I no doubt, talking about leadership. I've written sustained leadership on the program, but it'll be in that ballpark because obviously she's doing a really good job being a leader. Natalie Stevenson, problem solving, the missing heart of primary mathematics. Amen. Yannalie Stevens coming all the way from the Costa del Sol to talk about a whole school approach to retrieval practice. Candida Crawford from Third Space Learning, what 50,000 one-to-one lessons have revealed about hidden mathematical misconceptions. Hannah Gillett and Dominic Briscoe talking about the future of feedback, session they've done regularly. Actually should have said Dominic will also be doing the keynote. He did the keynote last year in London. He's asked if he could do it again this year. And he did it. He's done a really good job last year. So I thought, yeah, absolutely. And then the first virtual Chris Such session, what does every teacher need to know about reading? And so obviously that's Chris's the art and science talk. And his second one is based on whatever his second book was called. I can never remember. So where are you guys going to say?
Last year, we listened to Chris Such's talk, and he just has that absolute skill of making something really, really complex be crystal clear. And it was very, very brilliant. But like you said before, it can be about making sure that you've not heard it before, or if you have heard it before, you want to hear it again, or you want to add layers. And I'm sure he'll be adding layers to everything that he said before and written in his books. But we're fortunate enough, Lacey's made contact with Chris after that last year, and so we've got some CPD running across our schools. So I don't know whether you, Lacey, have chosen to Chris Such's session, but we're just going to have it from CPD for our school. So.
And I think that's such an indicator of how kind of inspirational these days can be. That was, we sat in the room together and just said, everyone in our schools needs to hear Chris speak, and we can get them to listen to podcast and we can get them to read the book, but it's not as inspiring as kind of seeing him talk in person, and we really wanted everyone to have that. So we're really excited about that piece of work.
That would be a top pick, but you'd have to look at whether whether that would be your priority, or whether you've read his book already done some CPD in schools, hopefully based on his work or worked with him. I would be really fascinated to hear about misconceptions from Candida Crawford, because that's the bread and butter, that's the nitty gritty of teaching, isn't it? And that sounds really fascinating, especially if you have a lot of research or instances to draw on. That will be quite a meaty session, I would imagine. But I'm speaking at the time anyway. So and I'll be looking at problem solving and just how that. I don't want to say make a generalisation about every classroom, but I think over time, since I worked with Jenny Pennant from Enrich a long time ago, a bit more than 10 years ago, to sort of assist really the support an Enrich problem solving course for teachers, and it was a 4-day course, a proper investment in how to teach deep problem solving, alongside Kate Frood, who's written a brilliant maths book, and she's both of our former head teacher at Eleanor Palmer. So back in those times, I was thinking back to that and what I learned from them, and what I learned from that experience of deep CPD about it. And it feels now that we're quite a long way from that, and so much has improved about maths teaching, but also that deep sort of problem solving where the lesson might be differently shaped from a typical kind of White Rose style lesson. That's been squeezed out of many classrooms, not all classrooms, and many timetables, because we've got an incredibly heavy curriculum that and winds up with lots of teachers feeling like they need to teach the content, not the children. So I'm sort of making a case for it, but also being a bit practical about, okay, so we've got the curriculum we've got, we're really good in schools at giving children their entitlement to fluency and reasoning, and weaving reasoning in. But problem solving is one of the 3 aims of the national curriculum, and it's their right. And it's also what brings joy to teaching, and it brings joy to the classroom, and grappling with problems, and it's all to do with resilience and growth mindset. So I'm going to be talking practically, but also a kind of call to arms for let's bring that back if we can. And hopefully if the curriculum's cut back a little bit at primary level, we'll be able to go deeper with fewer concepts.
Nice. I think there's actually a bit of overlap there with Chris's talk, because obviously Chris will be talking about the reading rope, Scarborough's reading rope, but there's actually Kilpatrick has a maths version of that. I don't know if you've seen, or maybe you already referenced it. But if we think about how do we, Mike Askew has the fluency, reasoning, and problem solving Venn diagram, and the intersection of all 3 is maths. How do we get that across? So important. And we're having this conversation has been going on for a long time, and anything we can do to support teachers in developing those strategies, 100%, because it can't be that we fall back to the very basic version of what our curricular offer describes.
Problems, if you're thinking about a problem being something where the end solution isn't immediately obvious, it can't happen. Problem solving can't be a sort of 1-minute activity or even a 5-minute activity. You need children and sometimes teachers to grapple in that unknown space, in the sort of cloud where it's not quite certain which route to take, and that feeling, getting used to that feeling of discomfort, and then sort of enjoying it. That sounds a bit masochistic, doesn't it? But that's I would love that to be. Oh well, it's the entitlement of all our children, isn't it? It's really interesting to think that actually goes across subjects as well, in a way, and linking it to different speakers. I hope that I'm ever the optimist, and I think that this can then be combined. It's baby and bathwater. We don't want to toss out all the gains that we've made thinking about the smallest steps being the easiest to take, but sometimes you've got to take a bit of a leap, I think. And I will talk a little bit about, it's a best bet for schools. You can't get everything perfect. You can't expect teachers to have deep enough subject knowledge that they're replanning their curriculum and weaving in problems to every single aspect of their curriculum. But what can we do? And it's better to do something regularly than nothing at all, because it's all too much to make it perfect.
It's always, so interesting tracking back, as you've just said, to kind of the 4-day course, which is where we actually met. And I'm in a position in my career where, I was kind of working in a school where everything was very formulaic and very structured, and things like problem solving were being completely pushed out. And I went along to the course and met Nat and Kate and felt totally re-inspired sort of by teaching, and was fortunate enough then to go on to work at Eleanor Palmer. And yeah, so I have, I would so thoroughly recommend that people go along to your session, Nat, and I really hope lots of people do. I've seen Shannon speak on a number of occasions, and I think she always speaks. I've seen her speak about a few different things, so there's a lot of variety, I think, in the expertise that she brings. But again, as Nat said, everything that she talks about is with such conviction and lived experience. So I know what a fantastic session that will be. But I have to be honest, I've been sort of slightly drawn in, I think, by the title of Candida Crawford's session, because that really striking title of what 50,000 one-to-one lessons have revealed about hidden misconceptions and responses just feels like it's too big an opportunity to miss. I know that so many primary practitioners will be aware of third space and the work that they do in kind of the field of tuition, how they're kind of using AI as a tool to support with that, and some of the fantastic blogs that they write. And certainly from my time as a year 6 teacher and working with year 6 teams now, I know how valuable their kind of tools and resources can be, particularly in that sort of build up to assessments. So I'm just really interested to see some of the key components that they've pulled out from all of the sessions that they have, and what it is that they're doing to kind of overcome those, particularly in the way that Candida explains it, how children kind of obscure their understanding and their misconceptions, and how we can unpick that further, because we all know how hard it can be to kind of get round and interact with all 30 children in one single lesson, and how you really want to ensure that they have the level of understanding that they need, and also kind of getting over that age-old barrier of teaching something but the children not having learnt it. And yeah, so any tools or tips that she has that can kind of overcome that, I think will be of great use and I'm sure in a wide range of fields. So yeah, really interested for that one.
It's a massive data set, isn't it? So it'll be really interesting. So if you could, I want to see your notes, because I never get to see like all of the sessions. I'll be firefighting or making sure that everything's okay in the sessions, or getting ready for the raffle, no doubt. But that does look really interesting. I mean, Yanli, I think Yanli's bringing one of her colleagues with her this year. She spoke last year in London. Like I say, she's flying from Liminar, which is in the Costa del Sol or Andalusian sort of part of Spain. And so obviously they've been utilizing this whole school approach. I can't remember. It's something fetch. Oh, gosh, I really should be able to remember the name of the thing is about fetching. It's this analogy for find and fetch or something like that there. Sounds really interesting. Hannah and Dominic, like I'm an AI skeptic, but they've convinced me that I'm also a marking and feedback skeptic. So I'm very interested in how things are developing with stylists. So if anyone's at the thinking about their approach to writing feedback and what's happened with stylists over the last year, because obviously the rate that things are progressing in those fields is rapid. Then go check that out. And then Chris, he's okay, so if you really have to, the fact that he's going to be there 2 days before, no, he'll be fantastic. And like I said, he was online last time because he couldn't make it to Wales, but he beamed in and it was great. So I think very tough across the board. Speaking of Kate, does she know this conference is happening in Camden? Is she coming?
She does, and Lacey, have you spoken to her last, or have I messaged her?
No, with a very persuasive. Well, I have no doubt that she'll be supporting it as a local cause, and the fact that Nat and I are kind of involved in it. But yes, she was very excited to hear that it's come to her sort of home borough.
And she spoke last year, so maybe this time she'll be able to enjoy it even more and sort of get round a few more sessions and things like that.
Well, she got in touch with me like a week before the conference last year and said, "Is there still space to speak?" I was well, yeah, there is actually. That's wild because she'd previously spoken a couple of months to me about it. That's why I was asking, is she aware of this happening? Because obviously, like, she was the one who introduced me to you guys,
Yeah,
possibly on the day. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
it's
that's right.
great. And like I say, and really well received A to Z episode as well when she appeared on the podcast. Session 4, we've got Olivia Dempsey, practical school improvement from special measures to success. Really, really interesting. Rise and Shine, I think, is her subtitle or the main heading. And then John Cripwell is talking about cognitive science in mathematics and what it actually means in the maths classroom. Jen Sutherland, the writing metacognition gap. Adam Loewen, why early writing foundations matter for equity. Then Emma Lurie is talking about using continuous provision in Key Stage 1, so that's the autonomy to thrive. And then Chris Such's second session, based on his, in the classroom, what does the art and science look like? How can reading lessons be structured for more meaningful learning? Obviously, Chris has got his recommended structure because the abundance of research we have in reading, but actually how do we apply that faithfully without slipping into comprehension quizzes, which is almost like the easiest thing to do. And I say that as someone who only ever really did that when he taught reading.
I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone in this one, and I'm going to go to Emma Lurie's session on continuous provision in Key Stage 1. I think across our partnership, continuous provision is something we've kind of gone back and forth on, and we've done quite a bit of work on in probably the last 5 or so years, and even beyond that, have been thinking about it. And I think I've been really lucky to see it work brilliantly in some settings, but I've also kind of seen the impact it can have when it doesn't work so well. And I think it's definitely something that early years particularly isn't an area of expertise for me. So I'm really trying to kind of expand my own knowledge. And I think any kind of information and experience that people can give about sort of that foundation, that knowledge, and then how it can expand up into Key Stage 1 or even beyond. I'm really keen to see how that works and the work that Emma's done in kind of different nurseries. The fact that she's been a head teacher, she's kind of led different settings. Just think that would be a really interesting one for me personally.
Nice. I mean, it's statutory in Wales to I always forget the term they use for it, but in year 1 and 2 you need to be utilizing the what we would call the continuous provision of the wider environment. So when we were developing the story of maths for Welsh schools, our year the equivalent sort of ballpark has those kinds of tasks. Because I mean Emma's sessions go down really, really well. But it might be worth.
It's really interesting that it's statutory, because that's really, saying something powerful there about child development and what children actually need. But I was wondering about the title of that and continuous provision, and the difference between that perhaps and enhanced provision, where there's a more of a focused activity, but in a different, utilising the environment in a slightly different way for that. It'll be a really fascinating talk, I think.
Yeah.
So you'll need to pose that question then, Lacey, won't you?
Sorry?
You'll need to pose that question, Lacey, when you go to that section.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question is like, what does that actually look like? And also, if someone's been a head teacher, that like you commented, Lacey, that gives it a different lens, because it really is then, okay, so what happens when your year 1 or year 2 teacher or the teaching team aren't early years practitioners? So that's not there. Although there aren't huge differences in ethos in a school, you might feel like is it dependent on the expertise of the people in the team, and to what extent is using enhanced provision or focus activities or continuous provision dependent on that sort of subject knowledge or pedagogical approach, and can it be successful irrespective of that? I think would be really interesting. I don't know. These are all questions that we've thought about as school leaders over time. You can probably tell.
They're powerful questions, and it is the implementation, isn't it? Because I think the spirit, everyone can identify with the spirit of it.
Yeah.
But what does it look like in the classroom? Yeah. So really interesting. Yeah. So do feedback, Lacey, and maybe I'll get Emma on to talk about this. I probably should, because she's spoken at quite a few of our conferences.
Yeah, please do. I'd listen.
And then Natalie, where are you going to go to?
I am going to go to Adam Loewen's Early Writing Foundations for Equity. And I think that's just really timely probably for all of us, but for me, in light of the writing framework, although I've got a maths specialism, that I've actually got a background in writing in English and was a journalist. So I'm always really, really interested, because I came to teaching after a different career. And, when I was a newer teacher in the classroom, giants like Alan Peat and Pye Corbett were kind of really instrumental reading about their approaches to writing. But I feel that then specialising in maths and going down that road, there must be much, much more out there that's going on. And I was quite excited to listen to a DFE, I think it was a DFE webinar, or about the new writing framework. What was the title of it, Lacey? We listened to it, didn't we? We watched it.
Along those lines, like an
yeah. It was really interesting, because it was just exciting. It's exciting to me. Like, look, this is something that we have not nailed in English education system, and there must be really great ways to do that. And writing's really complicated, really hugely complex skill. But what are the best ways? And those foundations and getting it right and it earlier, so that we're not unpicking things in Key Stage 2. I was a Key Stage 2 teacher for most of my teaching career, and you just want to dial it back and get it right at that really early stage, so that children really enjoy and feel empowered by writing.
Writing episodes get a massive response to they do. Like whenever the writing framework was launched, was it Jane Considine was on, and then recently we had Nikki Parr talking about handwriting. I'm actually talking to someone soon about left-handed writers, who I know struggle quite a bit. I have a friend of mine at university, even though he was in his 20s, was still struggling with the fact that he was left-handed and the inconveniences that can bring. So, I think this, we've got the writing manic cognition gap and Adam's session seen as one of the few occasions where there's a bit of a clash, but I don't think they're the same topic or the same elements of literacy or English that so they may sit alongside each other.
What I find really interesting about it, when you look at maths, things like fluency, there's this understanding within our profession about fluency underpinning the reasoning and the problem solving, and the two working together really well. And in writing, sometimes it feels a bit more at odds, that we need to give children freedom, and we need them to be not too constrained and by rules and grammar and all that kind of thing. But I think it's the same thing, really. It's a contradiction or a binary way of looking at things that isn't very helpful to us. And actually, when you're writing, sometimes, or problem solving in any kind of way, and writing is about that sort of, having some restrictions or having some rules about how that then you can play with, might make your writing better. So anyway, it's I think that will be really, really interesting to see how we can get foundations of writing, like sentence sense, really, really right without crushing creativity. I think that's totally possible. And that's what we should be aspiring to anyway.
100%. It's almost like the grift economy seems to try and make things more difficult for those kids who struggle, doesn't it? In both writing and maths. So I think the more sensible conversations we're having, the better. And then session 5, just before lunch, and we've got a lovely curry planned for everyone, and that covers all diets. But you got to hang on. This is what I think finishes at 2, so 40 minutes before 2, 20 past 1. You'll have had slightly longer break between 3 and 4, I think, to hop up on caffeine. But we've got Kate Obridge and I want to say Laura Mason, but my knowledge of phonics was to say Mason. So I apologize to Laura in advance for butchering name. But they're both two very experienced head teachers talking about setting the climate and developing culture in schools. Then we got Kate Fern exploring mastering times tables. And she was really well received when she spoke in Manchester. Sam Parks about making games-based learning for fluency meaning for all learners. Donnie Morrison, reaching reluctant writers. Laura McPhee, talking about belonging, psychological safety, and school improvement. And then Rebecca Boyle-Sue, tired to inspired, practical brain breaks for learning creatively. Hopefully I haven't butchered that title, but Rebecca is from the Artist Foundation, and they're one of our new sponsors. So interesting to see how that session goes, because when I see brain breaks, I think brain gym, but I don't think Rebecca's going to be talking about that kind of thing.
I'm really interested in Kate and Laura's session on this one. Likewise, not I would guess mass on, but Mason feels more logical. So I look forward to hearing her speak herself. Um,
Oh, yeah, what's that thing called? It's Chris has a word for it. You know, where you use the statistical probability of the number of times.
yeah,
What's that called?
I can't think what he calls it, but I know exactly what you mean. That yeah, best bet.
Mace is more common, isn't it? Because we see that more. We say the word more often, so it's more likely
Yeah,
to be the way of. I don't know. Sorry for
yeah.
interrupting.
No, and apologies, Laura, in advance. Um, a relatively new leader in a school, and I think I'm always interested in hearing other sort of head teachers speak. And kind of on this journey that I've been on, Nat has and other former head teachers have given me so much kind of guidance on setting that culture kind of as you want it to be, and how important that is. And I think it's something that you can really see how quickly things can change when you don't get that right, be it amongst your staff team, amongst your parent community, amongst the pupils themselves, and how minor details that perhaps can seem insignificant can have such a huge impact. It's now kind of our second year here at Hawley as kind of being the leadership team, and it's been a real journey to kind of get to this point, and we feel like we've made lots of progress, but it's taken a lot of effort to get this kind of culture where we want it to be and shifting from sort of how it previously was. And I know that there's still a long way to go. So yeah, really interested to kind of see the journeys that these two sort of very experienced and sort of professionals have been on, and what they've done and what worked for them. And I think there's something that leaders at all stages can learn from this.
I am zooming in on the last one, and I mean, for me, games and fun are non-negotiable in primary education, and it's what makes the children run into school. It's what makes teachers want to be here, and specifically maths games. And I'm thinking dice games, card games, dominoes. They're a huge driver for motivation. And the session I'm choosing is Sam Park's session, and it does say digital maths games, how digital maths games support maths children's fluency. I'm not anti online games at all, but I do have a preference for dice games, card games, that sort of thing. But I think either way, what I would look forward to is the sessions of unpicking how that can motivate children, how games give teachers the information that they need about what children do know and don't know, and be able to respond. And I do think that games provide one of the only contexts, or a really good context, in which when people fail, they want to do it again. And that is gold dust in primary, because it's such a way to move forward from what we've long called, good mistakes, learning from our mistakes and being comfortable with that. So I think that will be a really great session to end the morning with, or the day, the conference.
The Wednesday after this episode goes live, Stuart and I will be exploring a meta-analysis that was released in November 25, and basically it took all the studies into what would it be, digital mathematics interventions between the year 2000 and the year 2023. And they sort of give their thoughts on the efficacy of interventions that are digital, which, a lot of games may be. But I'll stop short of revealing the outcome of that, and I'll leave that.
Oh no! Well, I hope what I've said isn't too controversial. I mean, I think it's not one or the other, is it? It's not. That's what I was trying to grapple with before. I was trying to remember. Education's full of false dichotomies, right? And that might not serve us. So it depends what you're trying to do, what problem you're trying to solve. And I think the more we can get young children and in classrooms rolling dice and playing games and enjoying that, that's great. That's tangible, and it's in the moment, and it means the teacher can be close to the teachable moment in space and time, and not marking something after school or looking at some data afterwards. However, there's such a place for using tools like Times Table Rockstars, for example, so that you can have a heat map of your class and what they do and they don't know, so you can be more precise the more information you have, then the more precise you can be in your teaching, and it's not one or the other. But if I had a choice between the same thing and it was on a screen or it was rolling dice, I would want them to be doing something in real life. But then I suppose the bad side of that is that you can't get the data so efficiently. But never underestimate what's in a teacher's head.
No, too right. I mean, there's the social element of in life board games, in vivo board games, and
Yeah.
we used to give the dice sets home and the shut the box sets home to our parents, and we would use the parents that we brought in for the workshops where we basically played board games, but there was a mathematical twist to them. There's is it Cujo? Is like a negative number card game, and basically the cards you draw.
Not the horror film about dogs. No.
Is there? Oh, that's interesting.
That's Stephen King book, actually, I think. Yeah.
Is it?
Okay, a card game.
I better make sure I don't tell teachers to Google that, or they'll be getting safe search warnings. Yeah, but I'm team board game.
And it's turn taking. You're right. I didn't even mention that, the social aspect of it, and just the fun of it, the love of learning. It's what it's all about, isn't it? We have something in our school that Kate Frood actually started, which is stay and play. So once a month, parents stay after the register and then play the games, because it can be really hard to take things home. We do send things home, and games are maybe more likely, are a good way of instilling the love of learning and forming partnerships with parents. But if they can come into school and see how it works and play alongside their children, then that's been really a really positive, lovely community thing to do, and that sense of belonging. And this is what our school's all about.
Yeah, because there'll be so many schools who are trying to get parents engaged, and that's the easiest way to do is to get them to do something with their child, isn't it?
Yeah.
So 100%, yeah, take that stay and play idea, because we do it at reception. Why not do it with the older children?
Yeah.
Because I remember one of the parents saying to me, "Oh, they don't look at the screen as much anymore. They're not asking for the screen; they're asking for the game that we played in school." And I was like,
"Oh, you're winning."
That's when you know you've gotten through to them, And this was like a hard to reach family, who'd probably been raised on tablets, for better or worse. So that was big. So let's see. So Lacey, you've chosen. You chose Kate and Laura's.
Yeah, Kate and Laura.
And Natalie, you chose Sam's.
Yeah.
Kate's session, like I said, really well received. Her approach to approach the times tables, if that's your sort of thing, almost like you're probably looking to complement what you're doing with Rockstars, because in terms of digital things, the gold standard really. You can't, the efficacy is unparalleled in my opinion. I've seen two of my own children plus countless, maybe what the best part of 7 year groups, or sort of 7 years worth of use in school.
But you have to teach it, because that's the practice. But you have to teach and the relationships and between the numbers as well, and practice it as well as the practice online. I think the two go together, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. And then Donnelly's work on reluctant riders, I'm sure, will be very good. Laura's work on psychological safety and school improvement, probably links back to what Adam Colback and Chris Passy were talking about. It was almost like this, not authentic leadership, but leadership where the space in which you're creating, you're allowed to show your vulnerability, which quite often it will be a mistake that I've fallen into, where I can't be vulnerable. I'm the senior leader, and really we know that's a load of nonsense, isn't it? But can we make that space for our colleagues? And like for instance, you two guys, I'm sure you guys give your teams permission to be themselves, warts and all, and then you get the best out of them as a result. And then like we said, Rebecca's session, looking at practical brain breaks. So the Artist Foundation, they're transforming lives through the arts. So very excited to see where they go. But they thought, we'd see what that relationship could potentially be. Because like I said, this doesn't happen without Step Lab, without Stylus, without PKC, without third space learning. And I'm trying to think, hopefully I haven't forgotten, obviously without my own Alta education. And Stuart allowing me the time to do this on the company dime, is massive. But like all the sponsors we have, I was saying to someone yesterday, they're all companies I would be using or have used in school. It's not, there's no soul selling or like I don't know, under the table deals to be done with our reputations. It's very much a case of these guys want to help. It means we can donate all the money we raise through the tickets to the Vlinder Cancer Centre.
And thank you for that, because it's really hard when you're in school as a school leader and so many different things come at you, trying to sell you different snake oil, and actually to know, it might not be the thing for your context, but actually this is really well intentioned, and it's well researched or powerful. That's so nice to know.
Yeah,
sort of quality assurance, I suppose.
It's only because I wasted so much time of my own time on stuff that I wish I hadn't. So anything we can do, I don't know. I must be really annoying to the people who get in touch with me, but I don't feel as bad because so many of them are using artificial intelligence and pretending they've listened to the episodes. And so like if you want to get in touch and you want to start breaking that gatekeeper gate down, building an actual relationship by making an actual contribution to education is probably the easiest way to do it, because you can tell the charlatans and the snake oil salesmen, and though they have never been near a real working classroom from a mile off, because like the situation in England alone and perhaps around the world is not getting any easier, and budgets are getting tighter. So you've really got to have to spend that money. It must be a good use of money to be justified, so then we got lunch, and then during lunch we do like a really twee raffle. The prizes are great. I've got a wheel of names, and I spin the wheel, and basically the person will come up and collect their prize from the person who has donated it. So we'll have, not like Shannon did some CPD last year. I haven't got the official list in front of me, but I know like people will donate books if they've written a book. People like Amy always donates a Wreck and Wreck and her how-to book and stuff. So, well worth sticking around till the end. And because lunch is at the very end, I think that makes it easier to go to all the sessions. So, I mean, any final thoughts on TDaPE London, and anything you're looking forward to the most outside of the sessions?
I think there's obviously a real kind of personal excitement about seeing so many enthusiastic primary teachers, in Camden, in our school. I think it's just going to be such a lovely environment, and just, the sessions aside, those snippets of conversations you have with people when you're overhearing someone talking about what a fantastic session they've been to when you're getting a coffee, and how much you can take away, be it tiny changes you make personally or much bigger school-wide changes. So yeah, it's just a day that really inspires forward thinking, and I'm looking forward to it very much.
I would wholeheartedly reiterate what Lacey has just said, and I think that it is in January. It's nice to have something to look forward to beyond everything else. And I think, education's tough. It's a tough job being a school leader. It's a very tough job being in the classroom as a teacher. It's also the most wonderful job. And events like this remind us of why we do it, because it's all people giving up their time because they're passionate about improving the lives of young people. So it's a very inspiring place to be, with lots of like-minded people. And I think even for anyone who's thinking, but I'm not going to feel like I need to recover, I need to like regain some energy. I feel that, but actually sometimes you come to something like this and it gives you energy. So that's what I would say. Sign up, come along, because you will. There's no doubt that you will walk out the door with some fresh thinking. And that will give you energy to power you on to the end of January when we all get paid.
Absolutely. There are times when I will have driven through the night to a conference, say it's on the West Coast, and I'll have driven through the night, arrived at midnight, and then after a 5-hour drive, then up the next morning for the 8 o'clock coffee. But actually at 4 p.m., because I've enjoyed the session so much, and it's reinvigorating, isn't it? And it gives you that drive to get through January. Because I was back a day this week, and I was like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have taken any time off because I'm already behind.
It's vampire life, where you wake up and it's dark, you go home and it's dark.
It'll be bright and sunny in Camden next Saturday, I'm sure.
It will be. I actually quite like this time of year, but I know not everyone shares that. So. This will be a highlight.
We've still got a week. We'll keep tickets on sale. I've done the food order. I've ordered more than we need, so there's still room for people to join us. And all I have to do is say thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much, Lacey.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to see everyone next week.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
And to everyone at home, until next time, thanks for listening.